I walked through the front door of that split foyer suburban home in Merrill. And as I opened the door and crossed the threshold, my mother, standing at the top of the steps, said, "David Andrew Anderson," you know it's bad when she uses your whole name, "David Andrew Anderson, you've been fighting." How did you know, Ma? Because that white boy, let's call him Dylan, came by the house and said that you punched him in the nose. Well, yeah, Ma, he called me the N-word, Nigger, the N-word. And so I punched him in the nose. And in that moment, I thought I'd have some racial solidarity with my mother. And so I said, "And Mom, when they call us the N-word, that's what you're supposed to do. Punch them in the nose, right? Power to the people." My mom wasn't having it. She says, "No, David, we're Christians, and that's not how you're supposed to respond. I want you to turn around, leave this house, walk to that boy's house, and apologize to him and his mother." Dang, his mother too? That was the longest 2-block walk of my preteen life, but I did it. I knocked on the door. I apologized to Dylan and his mother for fighting. Even though my mom may not have had a language to define what she was telling me to do, later I would coin the word gracism. Gracism means to extend positive favor to other people regardless of, and sometimes because of, their color, class, or culture. And so even though she may not have had the word gracism, I think I was learning it at a young age. That word is defined, like I said earlier, but it's coming from the combination of 2 words. One bad one, racism, none of us like that. And then a positive one, grace. Now, racism is defined, as I define it, to really speak, act, or think negatively about someone else solely based on their color, class, or culture. Let me say it again. To speak, act, or think negatively about someone else solely based on their color, class, or culture. That's what I was experiencing with Dylan. Of course, there are broader definitions with regard to structural and institutional racism, but this was personal and individual racism. And that's what I was experiencing, but let me tell you what happened that day. You see, I got on the school bus and Dylan referred to me as the N-word. And I remember being angry, but I didn't really do anything at that time. We went through the day of school and then got back on the bus and there he is referring to me again and calling me the N-word. So I was feeling embarrassed on this school bus that was predominantly white. And so when we got off the bus, I decided this is it. And I jumped on him and we started fighting. And I said to him, "Take it back, take it back, take it back." And he took it back. I got up, I let him up. He went a block away and then turned around. And again, the N-word, the N-word, the N-word. So I chased him down with my little chubby self and I said, "I'm gonna catch him." And I called him and I got on top of him and started punching again. But this time I hit him in the nose and you can see a little blood coming out. So I got off of him, fight's over. I delayed going home for about an hour. And then when I got home and I crossed the threshold of that home that we were in, my mom made me face grace. You see, grace is defined as extending positive favor to people, even though they don't deserve it, they can't earn it, they can't repay it. It's just extending positive favor. And so there you have this word gracism made up of racism and grace. And what I was experiencing was racism on that bus, but also you have to understand the broader story. Just 2 or 3 years prior, we had moved into this new neighborhood in Adelphi, Maryland. My dad wanted to take the family to show on a family drive this new home that we were gonna move into in the weeks to come. And so he's driving, my mom's in the passenger seat, and I'm in the back seat with my 2 older sisters. Because I was the youngest, I had to sit in the middle on the hump. Anybody know what the hump is? All right, so now we're driving down the street, and Dad says, "Look left, see that house right there? That's gonna be our new home." To which I'm thinking, like the old show, The Jeffersons, we're moving on up to the east side. We finally got our piece of the pie. And he goes to the end of the street and turns around in something called a circle. And I learned that the circle even had a special name, a suburban name. They called the circle a cul-de-sac. My, we were really moving on up now. We even have new language for a circle. And so finally we move in a couple of weeks later, and I get to sleep in my own bedroom. I wake up on the first morning in the new house. I put my feet down from the bed to the floor. I pitter-patter down the hallway. I get to the kitchen. I look out the big bay window, and there's my dad out in the driveway with a bunch of police officers. And I said to my mom, why's daddy out there with the police officers? And she said to this little 9-year-old at the time, son, last night someone put a cross on our front lawn and they drove across the small little dogwood tree that I loved when we bought the place, and they have skid marks all across the front yard. But I'm thinking, well, a cross is a good thing, right, Mom? She says, no, this is not a good thing. It's an act of terror. It's against the law, son. And as she's trying to explain this to this young boy, the phone rings, and my mom picks up the phone, and she says, God gave us this house, and we're staying right here. And she hung up the phone. Mom, who is that? Someone calling from the neighborhood. They don't want us to live here. And I said, well, Mom, I'm okay if we want to move out of this house. That would be okay with me. Like I had any power to say that. I was fearful. She leaned down and she said, son, God gave us this house, and we're staying right here. And so it's at this time that I'm realizing that I'm experiencing all kind of feelings I didn't really knew I had before. But then I understood that gracism is not just about racism happening to you, but how do you respond to it? And when you respond to it with grace, you have gracism. And gracism is defined as extending positive favor to other people regardless of, and sometimes because of their color, class, or culture. And see, there are 8 sayings of a gracist, 8 underpinnings, 8 pillars, 8 things that if you incorporate into your life or into your company or into your country or to your college, if you take these 8 things and you seriously integrate them into the system of your life, it will help build a much more positive environment for everyone that lives in it. And these 8 sayings of a gracist that I will say to you will also be something that each person can take an inventory and say, how am I doing on this one? Or how am I doing on that one? You see, it's not anti-racism. Being an anti-racist is not a bad thing at all. It's a good thing, but it's what you're against. You want to be defined by what you do, what you're for, not just, hey, I'm not a racist. Well, that's good, thank you. But how about something positive? Instead of being defined by what you're not, how about being defined by what you are? I'm a gracist. Here's the first one. I will lift you up. I will cover you. I will share with you. I will honor you. I will stand with you. I will consider you. I will celebrate with you. I will heal with you. The 8 sayings of a gracist. Lifting others up means that you are lifting up the humble and assisting and elevating them towards success. I remember the first time I went to England, we stopped through the Heathrow Airport in London, and I asked people, excuse me, ma'am, can you tell me where the elevator is? I'd go to somebody else, sir, could you tell me where the elevator is? And someone finally said to me, sir, actually, we don't call them elevators here. You know what they call? We call them lifts. I'm thinking to myself, that's pretty cool. So I got on a lift and I went up to the next level and I got to my destination. In like manner, I think that that's what I want my life to be. I want to be an elevator of grace. I want to be someone that lifts other people up. Whenever they come in my space, whenever they come in my orbit, by the time they exit my space, I want them to feel like they're at a higher plane, not a lower plane. I remember a Jewish family invited me to their home one day, and when I went into their home, I got to the living room, and they had the sayings of a gracist written up on a board in their living room. I said, you guys are kissing up to me, aren't you? And the mother said, no, Dr. Hannah said, I'm not kissing up to you. This is our family constitution. And our 16-year-old reminds us of it every day. Mom, you're not lifting me up. You're not lifting me up. And so that is a saying. But here's another one. We'll just pick one more out. How about the fifth one? I will stand with you. This means that the majority is committed to standing with the minority, and the stronger is helping the weaker. For instance, if there's a group of people in a college or a university that feels unsafe or unprotected, and they're not really enjoying the benefits that everybody else seems to be enjoying with the system that works for them, the gracist in the room stands with them to make sure that they can also enjoy and be included in the circle of honor that everybody else seems to be able to enjoy just intangibly. And so standing with someone means that you will walk with them and you will advocate for them. So those are two sayings that we can just double click on for a moment. Now, as we think about what it means to be a gracist, I realize that those 8 sayings, while it's 8 of them, this is the 10-year anniversary of TEDxUCincinnati, Cincinnati. So I'm going to give you 2 more bonus sayings just to make it 10, okay? But first, let me tell you of an amazing African proverb that I've been quoting for years now. It says this: from afar, I thought he was a monster. When he got closer, I thought he was an animal. When he got closer, I thought he was a human. But when we were face to face, I realized he was my brother. You know, distance demonizes. Those people over there, they're monsters. They're animals. Maybe they're human. But when you're face to face, you realize this is my brother, this is my sister. See, I believe that comprehension begins with conversation. And when you begin to have conversation, you realize how people think and why they may feel the way they do. And you may not ever agree with it, but at least you'll begin to understand a little bit of how they got to that position. And so what about those last 2 to make it 10 sayings of a gracist, if you will? Here's one. I refuse to pass judgment. I will refuse to pass judgment, at least until I'm up close. In other words, I'm not going to judge a person, a people group, or even a public crisis until I get close enough to get more information so that I can speak to it in a way that's a bit more educated. And that takes discipline to say, I will refuse to pass judgment until I get more information. I'm going to reserve my opinion. Now, I feel some kind of way about what I just saw, but I want to make sure to get up close so I can have a more intelligent response, a more gracist response, if you will. Here's one more. This is bonus free of charge, okay? Here it is. I will choose to use difference as a doorway for dialogue. An example of this is when I went to this healthy, high-end restaurant one day called the Golden Corral. And so here I am, standing in line. There are a couple people in front of me, and you could see that they're looking at the cashier just kind of with the odd side eye. So when I got up close to her, because I was wondering why people were looking like this, when I got up close to her, I realized why. I saw something on her cheek. So instead of using that difference for distance, I used it as a doorway for dialogue. I said, you have something on your cheek. She said, mm-hmm. What is it? She says, it's a tattoo. I'm like, oh, it's a tattoo. Well, what does it say? What's it a tattoo of? She says, it's my ex-boyfriend's name. I'm like, oh, snap. That has to be really rough. She said, you have no idea. I don't know what I was thinking. I don't know if I was drunk or whatever. But when I get enough money, I'm going to try to have it removed. And I said, I'm sure that'll be good. And I'm sorry that happened. She goes, yeah, me too. And so that was it. There wasn't a whole lot more dialogue than that. But As I was walking away, I was just thinking to myself, I'm glad that her ex-boyfriend's name wasn't Ted. Or else she'd be Ted's ex. So anyway, I moved on with getting my meal, but I think in that moment, just somebody acknowledging the difference and being able to have a conversation about it made her feel like there was some empathy and a way of her to get it out as well. Well, we've learned really 10 sayings of a graces. But so what? In fact, so what actually happened when I went to Dylan's house to apologize? I knocked on the door, I apologized, right? You would think there'd be some change. So let me tell you what happened after that. Absolutely nothing. Well, maybe there was one change. And that was the power of the change in me. Because from that point on, I learned how to respond to offense and how to respond to people that may not always be the most positive in your life. And since then, I have been able to convene transformative conversations around the world where there are deep divides to try to help people understand one another through building bridges of conversation and peace. And I've seen gracism work its power on the streets of American cities when there are protests and in colleges and universities when they're needing a curriculum to help them, or companies and corporations that are trying to figure out how do you create a culture that's actually going to help people to get along. And so my life's been committed to that kind of bridge building. And it all really began when my mother made me take that long 2-block walk. And I wish that I could say there was a better ending to the story, like a Hollywood ending, sort of a Hallmark kind of moment where Dylan and I became best friends and we were singing Ebony and Ivory, living in perfect, unity on the bus or something like that, perfect harmony. But none of that actually happened. But the change in me is helping me bring a change in my world. And even though I walked that 2-block walk to have that transformation happen to me, maybe some of you might need to take a walk as well towards someone. Not excusing their racism or their bad behavior, but demonstrating what it means to embrace gracism. Thank you, Mom. Thanks to all of you.